Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Um, this time we're looking at some materials about Paris Defense and Space Technologies Limited. You sent these over. Looks like a company announcement, some financial statements, and even some potential podcast questions. So it seems like you're trying to understand their performance in Q3 of FY25.
Definitely. And those are some great materials to start with. You're going beyond just the numbers, it seems like, and really trying to understand the whole picture.
Exactly. All right, so let's jump right in with that company announcement.
Great idea.
Okay, so Paris Defense released their unaudited financial results for the quarter that ended December 31st, 2024.
Okay.
They had a board meeting,
Oh.
and wow, they got a lot done.
Oh, yeah.
They approved the financials, of course, but they also got the auditor's unmodified opinion, which I actually have a question about.
Yeah, an unmodified opinion from the auditors basically means that they've given the company's financial reporting a clean bill of health. It doesn't mean there are no issues, but it's a good signal to investors that the company's financials are transparent and reliable.
Okay, so it's like a stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Basically, good sign.
You got it.
Got it. But there was more to this board meeting, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The board is reappointing Dr. Hina Amal Gokhale, who has a really impressive background. Over 38 years of experience, including time as vice chancellor at the Defense Institute of Advanced Technology.
Wow, so she's got some serious credentials then.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so her reappointment shareholders will be voting on this.
Yeah.
What does this tell us about Paris Defense?
Well, it shows that they value deep expertise and experience on their board. It also points to their commitment to good corporate governance practices. And, the fact that they covered all of this, plus investments and divestments in just a couple of hours. The meeting was from 1:30 p.m. to 3:50 p.m., suggests they have a really efficient and decisive leadership team.
That's a good point. Okay,
Okay.
so experience decisive. Tell me more about those investments and divestments. What were they?
They're investing in Logic Fruit Technologies Private Limited, and they're divesting from their fully owned subsidiary Paris Green UAV Private Limited.
Interesting. It makes you wonder, what direction are they moving in?
Right, exactly. What are they prioritizing?
Yeah. Maybe the financial statements can shed some light on that.
I think that's a great next step. Let's see what kind of story these numbers tell us about Paris Defense's performance and their plans.
All right, so looking through these statements, revenue is up compared to the same quarter last year, but down a bit from last quarter. Profits, though, are showing some healthy growth year over year. What do you think?
Well, it's important to keep in mind that Paris Defense works in two main segments: optics and optronic systems and defense engineering. These are both very competitive markets, especially right now with what's going on globally. So the fact that they're growing at all, even with some ups and downs quarter to quarter, that's actually pretty positive. It shows they're holding their own and maybe even gaining ground.
Okay, that's a good point. It's easy to just focus on those quarter-to-quarter changes.
Yeah.
But the year-over-year trend does look pretty good. But what about that dip in revenue this quarter? Should we be worried about that?
It's definitely something to keep an eye on, but it doesn't necessarily mean trouble. There are a lot of factors that could be at play, like seasonality in their business, or even just some delays in projects. The important thing is to look for trends and understand what's driving those changes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. No company grows in a perfectly straight line, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of growth, one of the questions that you sent in was about their R&D initiatives. And I think this is a perfect time to bring that up because you can't have growth without innovation.
Absolutely. And in a sector like defense and space tech, R&D is crucial. It's how these companies stay ahead of the game and develop the technologies that will make them successful in the future.
And looking at their financials, they definitely have put a good amount of their budget towards R&D. They even started a new employee stock ownership plan, an ESOP, to attract and keep the best talent.
The ESOP is a smart move for sure. It basically gives employees the option to buy company stock at a discounted price. So it encourages them to really contribute to the company's success because if that stock price goes up, they benefit directly.
Makes sense.
Right.
It's a win-win. And it's not just internal initiatives. They've been active in the financial markets, too. Didn't they recently finish a qualified institutional placement, a QIP?
Yes, they did. They raised a lot of capital through that QIP. Basically, it's a way for listed companies like Paris Defense to raise funds by issuing shares to qualified institutional buyers. Think mutual funds and insurance companies, big investors who do their research. So a successful QIP is a really strong sign of confidence from the market.
Wow. So they're busy. New talent, new capital.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're getting ready for something big. But what exactly are they building towards? What are their plans?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let's dig a little deeper into these financials and see if we can find some clues about their strategy.
I'm looking at this section about how they plan to use the money from the QIP. It mentions working capital, general corporate purposes, and investments in subsidiaries. What does all of that mean?
Okay, so working capital, that's basically the cash a company needs for its day-to-day operations. You can think of it like fuel that keeps the engine running. Then you have general corporate purposes. That's kind of a broad term. It usually covers things like administrative costs, marketing, and maybe even strategic acquisitions.
Okay, so pretty standard stuff.
Yeah,
What about those investments in subsidiaries?
that's where things start to get interesting. This suggests that Paris Defense is looking to grow not just on its own, but also by expanding into other companies through strategic investments. And remember, they're also divesting from Paris Green UAV. So it seems like they're taking a very deliberate approach, investing in some areas and pulling back in others. It's all about focusing on what they see as their strength and the areas where they think they can grow in the future.
So it's not just about getting bigger, it's about choosing the right path to growth. That makes sense.
Right.
But I still want to know, what are they actually building towards?
Right. But remember your question about R&D. A company doesn't just invest heavily in R&D and attract top talent with ESOPs unless they have some vision for the future.
Good point. It's like they're laying the groundwork for something big. Do you think there are any clues about this in the financial statements? Maybe in that management discussion and analysis section?
Let's have a look. Here's something. We are particularly excited about the opportunities opening up in the small satellite launch vehicle market.
Ooh, now that's exciting. Small satellite launch vehicles are becoming more and more important, especially with all these private companies getting into space, like SpaceX and Blue Origin. And think about all the ways we use satellites now, from observing the Earth to communication.
Exactly. And when we connect this back to what Paris Defense is good at, optics and optronic systems, it starts to paint a pretty interesting picture. They could be developing key components or even entire systems for these small satellite launch vehicles.
Wait, remind me, what are optronic systems again?
Sure, so optronics basically combines optics and electronics. Think of things like high-precision cameras, lasers, imaging systems. These are super important for things like satellite navigation targeting and even space exploration.
So if Paris Defense is developing these advanced optronic systems, they can become a big player in the small satellite launch vehicle market.
Precisely. And that market is only going to get bigger in the next few years.
This is getting really interesting. So it's not just about defense anymore, it's about space. But why would they divest from Paris Green UAV if they're so focused on growth?
That's a great question. Maybe they've decided to really focus on what they're best at, optics and optronics, and they see this small satellite launch vehicle market as a better opportunity for growth. It could be that the UAV market is getting too crowded, or maybe they just see a better return on investment in space tech.
So it's not a step back, but a strategic move to focus on where they can really make a difference.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, this is what we do best, this is where the future is, and this is where we're going.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting for you. Because if you're thinking about investing in Paris Defense, you'll need to understand this shift. What are their plans for this growing space tech market? What kind of partnerships are they making?
Those are some great questions.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why you said these financial statements tell a story. It's like a detective novel trying to figure out the company's motives and what their vision is for the future.
And sometimes the most interesting parts of a story are the things that are left unsaid. What are they not telling us? What are they not investing in? Those things can be just as important as what they choose to highlight.
Okay, so we've looked at the company announcement, dug into the financial statements, and even started connecting them to some of your questions. You had a few more specific questions about Paris Defense, though. Should we move on to those now? You're right. Let's get to those. One question was about updates on their R&D initiatives. We touched on this a bit, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, R&D isn't just about inventing new things. It's also about refining existing technology, making things more efficient, and finding new ways to use what they already have. So even if we don't hear about brand new inventions, those ongoing R&D efforts are super important for them to stay competitive.
That makes sense. It's the foundation of everything they do. But is there any way to get more specifics about what they're doing with R&D? I mean, these financial statements don't really break things down.
True, the financials usually just give a total number for R&D spending, but, companies often talk about their R&D achievements or plans in their annual reports or investor presentations. If you want to go deeper, those might be good places to look.
Great idea. Okay. Another question was about the competition. Who are they up against?
Well, in defense and space tech, you've got players both in India and internationally. In India, you have companies like Farad Electronics Limited, BEL, and Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL. And globally, you have the big names like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Airbus.
Wow, so they're not playing around. What do you think sets Para's defense apart? What are they really good at?
Their specialized knowledge is what makes them stand out. They've really focused on optics and optronic systems. Those are high precision, high value components that are needed in a lot of different applications.
Right.
And like we talked about, their potential role in that small satellite launch vehicle market could really change things.
Right, that could give them a real edge,
Yeah.
especially with that market growing so fast. Okay, last question. What are some potential risks or challenges they're facing?
That's a big question for any investor. In the defense sector, there's always geopolitical risk. Things like global conflict changes and government policies, export restrictions, all of those can affect how a company performs. And then you have technology. It changes so fast in this space. So keeping up is a constant challenge.
So they need to be flexible and adaptable, always innovating to stay ahead of the competition and all those external factors.
Absolutely. And they have to be smart with their resources, especially as they move into new areas like the small satellite launch vehicle market. That industry needs a lot of capital. So
Okay.
getting funding and managing costs is going to be super important.
So what's the bottom line here? What's the big takeaway from all of this?
From what we've seen, it seems like Paris Defense is at a turning point. They're in a good place financially, they're making strategic investments, and they're setting themselves up for growth in a market that's changing really fast. They've got that solid foundation in optics and optronics, and their potential move into the small satellite launch vehicle market could really boost their growth. But they're also in a tough and dynamic environment, so their ability to adapt, innovate, and actually execute their strategy, that's going to be key to their long-term success.
That's a great summary. It sounds like they're a company to keep an eye on. Lots of potential, but also facing some big challenges. I feel like I have a much better understanding of where they stand, what their plans are, and what they could achieve.
That's what these deep dives are all about. Taking all this information, breaking it down, analyzing it, and coming out of it with a better understanding of the topic.
Exactly. And this time, it's given us some incredible insights into defense and space technology, the competition, the importance of R&D, and so much more.
And it all started with just a few questions about one company's performance. It really shows how everything is connected and how exploring one thing can lead to a much broader understanding of an entire industry or even global trends.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, where will our next deep dive take us? What new things will we discover? I can't wait to find out. And remember, if you have any sources, articles, or anything you're curious about, send them our way. We love diving deep into anything and everything.
Until then, keep exploring.